The Grand Story. Now David stole the hearts of all who came to him for help, but Saul sent posses out to capture him, and David knew his odds were slim. Just one false step would lead to death. Would this one be his final breath? And so in Samuel's dwelling place he found a refuge from the chase. The naked truth must be detailed. Saul went himself on David's trail, and came to Naioth in pursuit, but there he laid aside his suit and prophesied all that day long, while David fled to Jonathan. The royal heir and loyal page swore endless peace from age to age. Then David fled to Nob instead, where priests supplied the holy bread, and David took the giant's sword, the one who had defied the Lord. He took that sword back home again, to Achish king of Gath, and feigned insane, and let his spit run down. So Achish drove him out of town. And David fled again, and gave to refugees a place, a cave, a haven in the wilderness for desperadoes in distress. But Doeg, shepherd of King Saul, betrayed the fugitive, and all the priests bar one he slew, and Saul in deeper evil grew. To Keilah came the Philistines to loot the corn at harvest time, and David asked the Lord to guide his battle plans. If he should side with Keilah's folk and lift the siege, will they betray me to my liege? So to En-gedi David fled, and in a cave he made his bed. But there the men of Ziph betrayed the son of Jesse while he stayed. The ranting monarch's futile chase was met by David's act of grace. While David hid within the cave, the king turned in his shame to save. 400 men with Jesse's son urged him to act and have it done. The Lord has made this come to pass. Now let your javelin do its task. But David would not raise his hand against the Lord's anointed man. While unaware the king sat down, and David sliced the royal gown. Then Saul emerged and joined his men, and David called out, "Check your hem! My lord the king, why do you chase and hunt me down to your disgrace? The Lord will judge twixt you and me. I've done no wrong. So let this flea escape, and you go home again. Now let me live. Go with your men." And Saul cried out in wretched shame, "David, my son, on me the blame." A foolish man, and husband harsh, rejected David's men who asked for food to celebrate a feast. But Nabal answered like a beast, and David in a Saul-like rage set out to slay the fool and stage a massacre of all his folk. But Abigail his plans revoked. Then once again, in royal rage, Saul planned to kill his loyal page. Again the Ziphites sold his place, and Saul set out to track and trace. But David crept into the camp one night, the stars his only lamp, and stole the royal jug and spear, then called on Abner to appear. "Why have you let your master down? Some knave might steal the royal crown. For when the king is fast asleep, his bodyguard his soul should keep. But you have failed the royal brief, and I held back the hand of grief. My lord the king, return to home. In desert's wastes I'll dwell alone." As battle neared, King Saul called out. The Lord ignored his plaintive shout. As Dagon fell face to the ground, his hands stretched out the morning found. As fell Goliath at the feet of shepherd boy, complete defeat. Now Saul fell lifeless, filled with dread. In battle he would lose his head. At Ziklag David's heart was broke. Amalekites kidnapped his folk. 600 angry men gave chase. 400 men kept up the pace. The victims held in scant regard. 200 o'er the bags kept guard. The ones who with the bags had stayed brought to their mind a king afraid. Gilboa's mount was Saul's last stand. The Benjamites could not withstand nor fight the mighty Philistines, and Saul fell there with all his line. The Philistines made sport of Saul and nailed his body to the wall. The men of Jabesh marched all night and buried Saul with proper rites. When Saul first came to Samuel, a cut above all Israel, the lofty lad of Gibeah was seeking asses here and there. When Samuel came to Bethlehem, the ruddy lad was by the pen, attending to his father's sheep. Was this the one God spoke to keep? The Benjamite carved up the realm. The shepherd boy now took the helm, both by Samuel's horn anointed, both by God as king appointed. Both were true to town of birth, one of plenty, one of dearth. Saul in shame this earth departed, David wept, was broken-hearted. When word of Saul's defeat was brought to David, he was overwrought, and taught his men this sad lament, a threnody, a testament, in which he grieved for Israel's pride, and mourned for Jonathan who died. Now learn this lesson, woe betide the messenger who amplified.